So what is higher RUAE first? And this is going to be quick. So higher RUAE is you read 2 passages and then you answer questions on the passages. It's similar to what you did in Nat 5. Only difference is that this time you're reading 2 passages instead of reading 1 passage. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's check. Yeah, cool. So the good thing to know is that the question types for RUAE, they're known, and there's only 6 of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to break down also the steps to answering them. They're also known, and I'm going to break that down for you now. Okay, so here are the 6 question types. You can pause this obviously if you want to write it down. Here are the 6 question types. And now we're going to get into answering each type, yeah? Okay, so first type is the in your own words question. So this question is all about taking a piece of the passage and then translating it, basically replacing the words that are in that section and replacing them with your own words. So here is an example question. This is straight from a past paper, 2019, I think. And here is an example of a good answer. You see all the green. So everything that's highlighted in green has been changed, and the red/pink is what was the same from. It's basically like quoted straight from the passage. It's not been changed. Cool. So you see the good answer has mostly changed all of the words, whereas the bad answer, it's mostly not changed yet. You only changed like 3 words. You get me? These answers also, they're from actual papers that people have written. People did exams, and these are the answers they gave, yeah? So all of this, what you see on here is like real from like exams, yeah? So the steps to answering in your own words. First thing, obviously, you go to the line. So they give you a line number, go to the line. Second thing is to find a quote related to the question. So in this case, the quote related to the question is, trusted news agencies found it difficult to correct such fake news. This relates to the question, obviously, which is asking you about fake news, yeah? Then you rewrite the quote. So you don't write the quote down, you just rewrite it. Now, as I said in the tips, yeah, you can write it down if it helps, and then you can cross it out after, but make sure you cross it out because the whole point of this is to use your own words. So it's the opposite. If you quote it, that's the opposite of what they're asking you to do, yeah? So after you've got a quote, rewrite it and change as many words as you can. You want to be like this person here, yeah? Mostly green or all green if you can. And then the final step is you want to check again, are there any words that you can change? I found with a lot of my students, what they do is they'll translate it one time, they'll put it in their own words, and then when I ask them what about this and that, then they'll be able to do more. So do that for yourself. Ask, do that for yourself. Ask, is there any more that you can change? Yeah, anything else that you can add? Okay. Now, the second type of question is the analysis question. So this one, the in your own words question, and the compare between 2 passages question, which we're going to cover in a minute. These 3 are guaranteed, at least from the research I've done, which is, I've looked at all of the past papers from 2015 to 2019, and in all of the resources that I've seen, pretty much these 3 are guaranteed to come up. So you want to really know how to answer these 3, yeah? So this one, the analysis question, this is the one which asks you, okay, so this analysis question is a question which asks you basically to look at a piece of the passage, yeah, to take a quote or a part of the passage, a sentence or something, and to basically break it down in some type of way. Now, before I explain this, what's on the screen, I just want to show you this first. So there are different lenses of analysis, okay? There are different ways that you can analyze the writing. So and they're based on the different techniques that you can look at. So here are all of the different techniques that you can look at. Essentially, you have sentence structure, which talks about the how the writer puts those words together. You have word choice, which talks about the words that they use. Imagery, which talks about how the writer makes pictures with words. Yeah, and you have the definitions of the 3 different types of imagery right there. Then you have the tone, which is about the emotion, the feelings in the words, or the intention that the writer has. What are they trying to put across? Then you have contrast, when 2 kind of ideas or feelings, etc., points, they're put together, yeah, 2 opposite things. Okay, so now let me go back to the actual analysis. So when it comes to answering analysis questions, and again, the examples you see here, this is actual from someone's past paper, and this is actual SQA marker commentary. So there are 4 steps to answering an analysis question. First, as always, you go to the line. Then you find a quote or a word which relates to the question. In this case, the question is asking you about how the writer talks about the concerns about the internet. Then step 3, once you've got that quote, you write down what the technique is that you want to focus on. It's going to be one of these. Cool. Then after that, you have to explain what the quote or the word means related to the question. So for example, if you chose the word misguided to answer this question on, you could say that the word choice of misguided, it makes it, has connotations basically of how the internet is like has lies on it or can trick somebody, how people can fall into believing things which aren't necessarily true. Yeah, they can be misguided. That would be like a 1 mark. Yeah. You could focus on other things as well. Like for this person, they had a bad answer here, but if we wanted to flip this and make it a good answer, we could say how junk food, they said they didn't really explain it related to the question, which is why they didn't get the mark. So they could say like junk food, that the internet is full of things which sometimes it's full of things which aren't true. It's full of things which are bad for you. Maybe if you look at them, if you read them, it could have a harmful effect on you. Yeah. So this is why the writer is concerned about just everybody being exposed to the internet, because it could harm you in some kind of way. Yeah. Something like that. Okay. All right. So the third type of question is the look at both passages question. And I titled all of these questions the way that they're written in your past paper. So the past paper the question literally has look at both passages questions. Yeah. So if you memorize the titles the way I've done them, it'll click back hopefully when you set the test or whatever. Yeah. So basically, this is the 5 mark question at the end of your past paper, which asks you to compare between the 2 passages, yeah, to see what the writers have said and to answer based on either something they've agreed on or something they disagree on. Cool. So what you basically have to do is you have to find 3 areas where the writers agree or disagree, and then you have to explain that, yeah, and give evidence for these things. Again, these are actual answers, and this is actual commentary, yeah, from the 2018 or something like that, 2019 exam, I think, something like that, yeah. Okay, so what you need to do in terms of answering the question to get the 5 marks, what you need to do is you first need to, and I recommend this to all of my students, underline, is it asking you about disagreements or agreements, yeah? Because if you slip up and you choose the wrong, you like talk about the wrong type, even if you do it nicely and wonderfully and all that, you won't get any marks, yeah? So you need to make sure you talk about the right type. So this one, for example, is talking about how the writers disagree. Okay, we know that now. So now what you do to answer this is you first have to find an area where they disagree. So One thing I found helpful for my own students is to get them to skim read. So if you skim read the first passage again, and you just make a list of 3 or 4 main points that the writer is making. So skim read, yeah. What does he say right in the start, or she say right in the start? What's their main point? Write it down. Then look again, skim read again. If when they make another main point, write it down, yeah, and do that like 3 or 4 times. And then when it comes, so that means when you read the second passage, now all you need to do is just look at your little list, and then as soon as you see something that disagrees with it, you can note that down, yeah, and now you have something, your first answer that you can give. Then what you do once you have the first area of disagreement is you need to write down a quote related to that area of disagreement. For example, passage. Okay, let me say this again. So state the disagreement. The writers disagree that we can influence the future of the internet. Boom. So you can do it like they did. They give the explanation first of writer 1, yeah, passage 1. Or you can just put the quote there. So you could have put, it need not be like this, yeah, for passage 1. Then you say, in passage 1, blah, blah, blah. You explain what they say. For example, this guy says that the writer gives us a hopeful message that we can influence the internet's future. Then you would do the same thing, put the quote for passage 2. He might say the opposite. Yeah, he would say the opposite. Then explain what he says, yeah. So passage 2 disagrees with this, they say that, etc., etc. And then you just do that 3 times. Now you actually will get 3 marks if you just simply state a disagreement. Like obviously it has to be accurate, yeah. You can't just make one up. If you state an accurate disagreement and you give a quote for each passage, you'll get 3 marks just off of that without any explanation. So it's like practice this and you'll be getting marks, no problem, yeah. Okay. So the next type is the develops argument / link question. Now, this question is less common, but it's obviously still good to understand how to answer it. This question basically asks you to speak about how what the writer has said now in these lines is making a development of the points that he's been making. Maybe they're about to go on another line of thought. Maybe they're gonna add to what they've been saying in another way. This is basically like a I don't even, what would you say, like something like they've been building up to this point in their writing, and now they're gonna take like another step in another direction, or they're gonna add more. Does that make sense? So what they're asking you for is the link point, to explain the linking point between what comes before these lines, to explain the link point about what comes before these lines, and to explain the link in terms of what comes after these lines. So for example, the question here is explain the function of these lines in the development of the writer's argument. All right. So what you would do, as always, is you go to the line first. Yeah. Then you write down a quote relating to the main point the writer was making before this. Cool. So, so what was the writer talking about before these lines? Write down your quote for that. Then you explain the quote about the point he's been making, yeah? So like this, the writer has been speaking very charmingly towards society, etc. Now this person actually doesn't have a quote here. I don't know if I cut it out by accident. I think I might have cut it out by accident, my bad. But you would have a quote here, you explain this, so that he's right, he's been speaking about this, yeah? Then you do the same thing, but for what point he's making now. So you write another quote about the point he's making now, and then you explain that. You say, for example, this quote here is pointless treasures, yeah? And the explanation is, we are unwilling to accept that music is bad, and it needs to change. So pointless treasures, something that you think is good, so we're not willing to accept that it's bad, yeah? And then you just explain this. So quote what he's been talking about before these lines, explain it. Quote what he's talking about now, explain it. And that's it basically. So the whole thing is, how does this act as a transition between those two? Yeah. So this, you could say this. So this guy says the writer has been speaking charmingly towards society and the idea of change. He's been talking about how well we are willing to change. But here he's talking about how people won't change on this fact. They're not willing to give up Muzak. And the passage is going to go on to speak about how bad Muzak is and why we should change it. So it acts as a transition. People are willing to change, but they're not willing to change on this point. So it's a transition in the passage. Okay, so the fifth and penultimate question type is the context question. And again, I've literally not seen this in past papers. I've only seen this in like a resource created by a teacher. So this is another one of those which I don't know how likely it is to come up, but in case it does, you want to know it, yeah? So what this is asking you to do basically is it's just asking you to give a definition for a word and then explain how you got that definition, yeah? Using the passage, using the words around that word. So for example, they give you a question here, they say, asking you, so for example, the question, how do you get to the meaning of insubordination? The good answer here would be, in terms of the steps to answering this question, you need to underline or highlight words or phrases in the passage which help you to define the word, yeah? So what words around this one helped you to define it? And if you already know the meaning of it, which words could help you, yeah? Then give the meaning of the word. So what's the meaning? What do you think the meaning is? Then quote a word or phrase from the passage, one of those ones which you highlighted before, and then explain how they helped you to come to that meaning. For example, this person, they quote, love to display his rebellion. So you could say the word rebellion means disobeying orders or going against someone who's in authority. This helped me to understand that insubordination might mean going against someone who has authority over you, something like that, yeah. And then you can see the bad answers here. Yeah, so this guy, he didn't give a quote and he explained it wrong. And then this person here, they made the mistake of, they gave the right meaning, but they didn't give any quote, they didn't give any evidence yet to back it up. Okay. So finally, the last and final question type when it comes to higher RUAE is the effective introduction or effective conclusion question. Again, this is, I didn't see this in any of the past papers, but there is a possibility that this could come up. So it's good to know how to answer it. So they're essentially the same steps for both. It's just that you focus on different things each time, yeah? When it comes to the introduction, you're focusing on how the introduction, most of the time, how the introduction grabs attention, makes the reader want to continue to read. The steps for this are you quote a phrase or a word which grabs your attention, which grabs the reader's attention, yeah? Meaning when you read something, there should be something in there which makes you want to read more. That's what you're looking for. So you quote that and then you state the technique, very much like the analysis question, yeah? State the technique. What is it you're going to focus on? So for example, here, these were written by me because I couldn't find any, that's how uncommon this is. I couldn't find any example answers of this, yeah? So these were actually written by me. So I focused on word choice here. So I said the introduction, so you say what the technique is, yeah? Word choice. and then you just explain how it grabs attention. So the introduction is effective, blah, 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 word choice, a dizzying transition, and all you do is you just follow the steps for your analysis answer, yeah? So for example, you say transition tells us we reached another point of major change, grabs attention, makes them want to know the details of what the changes are. Yeah, it should be changes, my bad. And then the use of dizzying also adds emphasis, yeah, to how big the change is. I also made a mistake with the bracket, but listen, don't be hating, you're getting this for free, man, you know what I mean? Okay, now, yeah, okay.